The first sign of something unusual came as a pulse in the sky. It wasn't a storm, and it wasn't any satellite anyone had tracked. People across the world noticed it at the same time. In big cities, thousands of eyes turned upward as a faint shimmer spread across the atmosphere. In remote villages, children and elders alike paused, staring at a sky that seemed to hum with a strange energy. The shimmer lasted only a few seconds, but when it vanished, it left a quiet tension that no one could explain. Within hours, governments issued statements. There had been an interstellar transmission. Scientists described it in technical terms, calling it an unprecedented signal from deep space. But everyone understood the underlying truth. Someone, or something, had reached out. And the message was not friendly. News channels and social media exploded with speculation. Analysts, scientists, and conspiracy theorists debated what it could mean. Many dismissed it at first, thinking it was a hoax, a test, or a trick of technology. But when the contents were decrypted, the world realized this was no ordinary signal. It came from the Galactic Council, a coalition of alien civilizations known only in academic circles and science fiction. The message was a warning. Humanity must halt its expansion, the transmission said. Your technologies and military advancements are a threat to galactic stability. Cease all further development immediately or face consequences beyond your comprehension. People read the words and a strange mixture of fear and disbelief spread. How could humans who had barely reached the outer planets be considered a threat to a galactic coalition? Yet the calm authority of the message left no doubt. This was not a prank. Someone very powerful was watching Earth. Governments convened emergency meetings. Leaders from every nation argued over how to respond. Some called for immediate compliance, fearful of the consequences of angering a civilization whose capabilities were unknown. Others argued that giving in would be a sign of weakness, potentially inviting further demands or threats. The tension was palpable. Meetings went on for hours, then days. News cameras captured politicians pacing, gesturing, and speaking in urgent tones, while the world waited for an answer. Scientists and military advisors worked in secrecy, analyzing the message. They studied the pulse, the energy patterns, the timing, and the transmission method. Every detail suggested intelligence far beyond human capacity. Yet humans are curious by nature. Instead of simply fearing the council, teams of engineers and physicists began to study the possibilities of defense, of communication, and of understanding the aliens' weaknesses. They built models, ran simulations, and debated strategies. It became clear that humanity was facing a dilemma: comply and surrender freedom, or resist and risk total annihilation. Meanwhile, ordinary people felt the ripple of the warning in their daily lives. Schools held discussions about the transmission. News shows interviewed civilians who shared their opinions, fears, and hopes. In offices, employees whispered in hallways, speculating about the message. In homes, families argued quietly over what it could mean. The world felt smaller and larger at the same time, connected by a signal from light years away, yet terrified of what it represented. In the midst of this, a global broadcast announced the arrival of an alien delegation. Their fleet appeared in orbit, massive ships floating silently above the Earth. The size of the vessels alone was enough to make hearts race and stomachs tighten. They moved with precision, their designs unlike anything humans had seen. No engines that made noise, no visible weapons, just sleek shapes that radiated authority. The delegation did not speak at first. They only watched, waiting for a response. People on the ground stared up through telescopes, cameras, and even binoculars. The internet was flooded with live feeds of the ships, with commentators describing every detail. For the first time, humans understood the scale of the beings watching them. They were not myths, not imagination. They were real, and they were powerful. The Council issued a second message, this time directly addressed to Earth's leaders. It was formal and precise. The Council demanded that humanity dismantle its most advanced weapons, halt colonization projects beyond the solar system, and submit to oversight. The tone was calm, almost polite, yet underlined with authority that made it clear refusal was not an option. Public opinion was divided. Some people felt fear so deep it froze their actions. They urged compliance, saying humanity could not survive a direct confrontation. Others felt pride and defiance swell within them. They believed that surrender would betray everything humans had fought for: independence, curiosity, and the right to survive on their own terms. Arguments raged online, in newspapers, on television, and in conversations on the streets. Even with all the fear, some saw opportunity. Humanity had never faced a threat like this, and now, suddenly, the potential to unite under a common cause seemed possible. Nations that had long fought each other found themselves in tentative discussions, sharing intelligence and technology. Military experts began to cooperate on a scale never seen before. Engineers and scientists collaborated across borders, pooling knowledge to prepare for what might come. Fear had a strange side effect. It forced humanity to act as one. While world leaders debated and scientists planned, ordinary people continued their lives, but with a subtle shift. Children asked questions about life beyond Earth, wondering if aliens were watching them play in their yards. Farmers and workers looked up at the night sky differently, feeling smaller and larger at the same time. Artists began to create works imagining the visitors and the potential consequences. Everyone sensed that the world had changed, and there was no returning to the old normal. In secret, some experts studied the Council's past actions, searching for patterns. Ancient records and intercepted transmissions from other civilizations suggested the Council was usually diplomatic, but capable of extreme measures when they deemed necessary. They enforced rules across systems that spanned light years, and few civilizations challenged them and survived. Humanity had no experience with such power. Every calculation, every prediction carried the weight of the unknown. As days passed, humanity realized one crucial truth. They were being watched, judged, and tested. The Council's transmission was more than a warning. It was a statement that humans had arrived on a stage far larger than Earth. And for the first time in history, every person on the planet shared the same awareness. Their future, their survival, and their freedom depended on choices made in these moments of uncertainty. Some argued that the fear itself might be a test. Perhaps the Council wanted to see how humans would react, whether they would bow to authority or fight for themselves. Others believed that any resistance could trigger immediate destruction. Scientists, however, continued their work, driven by curiosity and a stubborn refusal to be helpless. They experimented with communication methods, defense technologies, and energy systems that humans had barely imagined. Each day brought small victories, small discoveries, and a growing sense that humans might not be as powerless as they seemed. Through all this, the world waited. There were no explosions, no sudden invasions, no immediate signs of violence, yet every news update, every transmission from space reminded humanity that their situation was extraordinary. Children slept with telescopes at their windows. Adults stared at skies filled with strange lights, and leaders weighed decisions that could determine the fate of every human alive. And in the quiet moments, people wondered what the Council truly wanted. Was it fear, control, or something else entirely? They had sent a warning, and now Earth's leaders had to decide: obey the command of beings far stronger than humans, or take a chance on survival by preparing to resist. No one had the answer. But one thing was certain: Earth had been noticed and the universe had changed forever. Humanity was no longer alone, and the first chapter of its encounter with a vast and powerful galactic civilization had begun. The pulse in the sky, the shimmering lights, and the words of the Council were only the start of a story that would test courage, intelligence, and the human spirit itself. Humans watched, waited, and began to realize that the question of survival was no longer about Earth alone. It was about proving that humanity could face the unknown, challenge fear, and rise to meet threats unlike any they had ever imagined. And in the hearts of many, a quiet determination began to grow. No matter what came next, humans would not be easily intimidated. The arrival of the alien fleet changed everything. The massive ships hung silently in orbit, reflecting sunlight like metallic mountains. They didn't move like anything humans had ever built. There were no familiar engines or trails, no sounds that the ear could catch. Yet the presence alone felt like a warning, a demonstration of power that needed no words. People across the planet stared, watched, and speculated. Cities stopped for a moment. Offices paused and streets emptied as everyone seemed to look skyward. For the first time in history, humanity felt truly small. The world's leaders had no choice but to respond. Emergency meetings were held in secure bunkers, on ships, and in government offices across the globe. Every nation, even those historically in conflict, had to put aside differences. Advisors, military generals, scientists, and diplomats gathered to discuss the impossible. How could humans respond to a civilization that had dominated the galaxy for millennia? The alien message came next. It was clear, formal, and unyielding. The Council demanded that humanity immediately halt all advanced weapons projects, all expansion beyond Earth, and submit to their oversight. It was not a negotiation. It was a command. The tone of the transmission left no room for interpretation. Humanity had a choice: obey or face consequences that could wipe out everything they had built. On the streets, reactions were mixed. Many felt terror. Some argued that surrender was the only way to survive. They imagined what might happen if the aliens decided to strike, envisioning cities destroyed, oceans boiling, entire populations disappearing in moments. Others felt something different. Instead of fear, a stubborn defiance began to rise. They refused to bow, refused to accept that humanity could be intimidated. The thought of surrender felt like betrayal, not just of the present generation, but of every human who had fought to survive and thrive on Earth. Scientists and engineers worked in secret, driven by both fear and curiosity. They examined the Council's fleet, trying to understand the ship's capabilities. Every observation brought more questions than answers. The technology was unlike anything humans had ever imagined. Weapons, shields, energy systems, propulsion, all far beyond current human knowledge. Yet even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human mind began to adapt. Models were built, simulations run, and strategies debated. If survival depended on intelligence and creativity, humans were determined not to fail. Meanwhile, ordinary people felt the change in subtle ways. Children asked questions no parent could fully answer. Are they really going to destroy us? Can we fight them? Adults whispered among themselves in markets, offices, and homes. Even those who normally ignored news felt the weight of the situation pressing into their lives. Every glance at the sky reminded them that the world had grown larger, more dangerous, and more mysterious in an instant. Public debates flared in every medium. Television channels, radio stations, and online platforms became stages for arguments and speculation. Some commentators warned that defiance could lead to extinction. Others said that submission would mean giving up humanity's independence forever. Editorials described the Council's demands as impossible, arrogant, or unfair. People argued about morality, survival, and pride, but everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity had been noticed, and the galaxy was no longer a distant, abstract place. It was real, close, and judging humanity in ways no one had ever imagined. As days passed, the Council's ships moved in ways that were both deliberate and terrifying. They changed positions, aligned perfectly, and created formations that humans could not replicate. Observers on Earth noted that the fleet seemed to anticipate human movements, almost as if the aliens could predict actions before they happened. This unnerved military leaders and analysts alike. Even so, humans continued to prepare. They built defenses, coordinated strategies, and shared intelligence on a scale never seen before. Fear had united a world that had long been divided. At the same time, some experts tried to understand the psychology of the Council. Records from other civilizations suggested that the Council preferred compliance, but was willing to enforce rules with extreme precision and speed. Some civilizations had disappeared entirely after ignoring warnings. Others had survived by submission, often losing freedoms they had valued. Humanity had no prior example of resistance that worked. Every option seemed risky, yet doing nothing felt impossible. Secret meetings focused on technology, innovation, and strategy. Scientists experimented with materials that could withstand energy weapons. Engineers studied propulsion systems and energy grids, trying to find vulnerabilities. Even everyday citizens contributed, sometimes unknowingly, through ideas, experiments, and innovations shared online. The collective effort was astonishing. The world had never faced a single challenge that united so many minds, and yet humans thrived on problem-solving, even under extreme pressure. Meanwhile, the aliens continued their silent observation. No attacks were made, no overt threats beyond the messages, but every movement, every formation, every signal suggested control. Humanity began to understand that the Council was testing them. The aliens wanted to see how humans would react. Would fear paralyze them, or would determination and ingenuity prevail? And with each passing day, humans began to respond. Not with surrender, but with careful preparation and planning. Ordinary life, however, carried on in strange ways. People went to work, schools remained open, and families carried on traditions, but nothing felt normal. The sky had changed. The world felt fragile and yet alive with possibility. Street artists painted murals imagining the council and humanity standing together or in conflict. Writers published stories online, imagining scenarios of negotiation or war. Humanity's creativity became a reflection of its survival instincts, a way to process fear and uncertainty while still moving forward. Leaders faced impossible decisions. Some proposed secret compliance in certain areas while preparing defense in others. Others argued for a bold, open declaration of independence from the council's authority. Debates stretched for days, sometimes breaking into arguments that could have torn alliances apart. Yet the common understanding remained. Humanity could not ignore what had been happening. The galaxy was watching, and inaction might be interpreted as weakness. In laboratories, young scientists and engineers worked long hours, often sleeping at their desks, consumed by the urgency of the situation. They experimented with communication systems, trying to send messages that could confuse, delay, or negotiate with the council. They built defensive technologies, imagining ways to protect cities, satellites, and critical infrastructure. Every small success was celebrated, every failure analyzed and improved upon. The spirit of determination burned bright, even as uncertainty loomed. Even in homes, people began to adapt. Families practiced emergency drills. Communities discussed ways to support each other if conflict erupted. Ordinary citizens who had never considered themselves part of a planetary defense suddenly found themselves thinking strategically about survival, about protecting their children, their neighbors, and their planet. Fear had created focus, and focus had created action. Over time, humanity's response began to take shape. It was not a single plan, not a single strategy. It was a combination of diplomacy, innovation, and preparation. Humans realized that surrender would ensure survival but destroy freedom. Resistance would be dangerous but could preserve independence. There was no perfect choice, only the courage to act despite uncertainty. As the days passed, the council's silent observation became more intense. The ships moved closer, forming patterns that seemed almost symbolic, a display of control and precision. Every movement was watched by millions on Earth, transmitted through live feeds, telescopes, and social media. People speculated endlessly. Was it a warning, a show of power, a test, or all three at once? Amid all this, humanity discovered something crucial. Despite the Council's apparent superiority, humans had qualities that could not be measured. Creativity, adaptability, resilience, and a stubborn refusal to surrender without a fight. Simulations showed that even against overwhelming odds, humans could find unconventional solutions, use unexpected strategies, and survive situations that seemed impossible. The realization gave a quiet confidence to leaders, scientists, and ordinary citizens alike. By the end of the first week, the world had changed forever. Humanity had faced the unknown, stared at an incomprehensible power, and refused to be paralyzed by fear. The aliens had not attacked, but their presence had forced humans to unite, to innovate, and to consider their place in the galaxy in a way that no one had before. The planet waited. Cities buzzed with nervous energy. Laboratories hummed with experiments. Families whispered about the future, and in orbit above, the Council's ships remained silent and commanding, observing humanity's response. It was clear that the next step would be critical. Humanity had made a choice not of surrender but of cautious determination. They would prepare, they would innovate, and they would not bow easily. The galaxy had delivered its warning, and Earth had listened, studied, and decided. It would face the challenge on its own terms. And in that quiet determination, a new chapter began. Humans realized that their survival, freedom, and identity depended not on fear, but on courage, intelligence, and unity. The decision that shook the world had been made. After days of debate, planning, and sleepless nights, humanity chose not to bow to the Galactic Council. Instead of submitting to demands that threatened freedom and independence, Earth's leaders drafted a formal declaration. It was short but powerful, a statement that the planet belonged to its people and that humans would not be intimidated by beings from the stars. The announcement was broadcast across the globe. Millions watched on screens while billions listened to radios and live streams. The message was clear. Humanity was ready to defend itself, to stand on its own, and to face the consequences of its choices. Fear mixed with pride as citizens heard their leaders' words. For the first time in history, the entire planet seemed to breathe with one voice. Scientists and engineers worked faster than ever. They understood that words alone would not protect humanity. The alien fleet in orbit was vast and technologically superior. Humanity had no choice but to prepare every defense, explore every strategy, and test every idea that might give them even a small advantage. Laboratories buzzed with activity day and night. Teams worked on energy shields, weapons capable of reaching orbit, and communication systems that could send confusing signals to the Council's fleet. Every calculation, every simulation, every experiment was conducted with one purpose: to give humanity a fighting chance. People on the ground felt the change in energy. Streets were filled with nervous excitement. Markets, schools, and workplaces carried on, but the topic on everyone's mind was the same. The galaxy had noticed humanity, and now Earth had made its stand. Children stared at the sky, imagining the massive ships above, wondering what the aliens looked like and what they would do next. Adults whispered about strategies, possibilities, and what survival might require. Even in ordinary life, the extraordinary had entered. As the world prepared, the Council responded. Their ships moved closer, forming precise patterns in orbit that seemed almost ceremonial. They sent a message acknowledging Earth's declaration. Their tone was calm but firm, a mixture of surprise and warning. Humans could feel that the Council had not expected this level of defiance. It was clear that humanity's decision had changed something fundamental. The Council no longer saw Earth as a simple, obedient planet. Humans were now a presence in the galaxy that demanded recognition. Ordinary people reacted in different ways. Fear was still present, but so was hope. Some worried about the inevitable conflict, imagining what might happen if the Council decided to strike. Others felt a thrill, a sense that for the first time in history, humans were claiming their place among the stars, refusing to be treated as weak or insignificant. Conversations in homes, streets, and workplaces reflected both anxiety and determination. People debated strategies, discussed possibilities, and shared visions of survival. Humanity had become united not just by fear, but by the courage to face the unknown together. In secret, military forces prepared. They knew that words alone would not keep the planet safe. Advanced fighter ships were readied for launch, orbiting satellites were upgraded, and defense grids were reinforced. Training exercises simulated attacks from highly advanced weapons. Every nation with the capacity to contribute did so, sharing technology, intelligence, and resources. Humanity was moving as one, driven by a determination that fear alone could never inspire. Meanwhile, scientists continued their relentless work. They studied the alien ships, their patterns, and their energy emissions. Every detail was analyzed to find weaknesses, no matter how small. They experimented with energy shields, propulsion systems, and artificial intelligence to coordinate responses across the globe. While humans had never faced a threat of this scale, they had a unique advantage: creativity and adaptability. Where machines might follow logic, humans could invent, improvise, and exploit the unexpected. The Council watched silently. From their massive ships, they observed humanity's preparations, noting every movement, every innovation. They recognized that humans were unpredictable, a species that had survived against overwhelming odds before. This unpredictability made Earth dangerous in a way few civilizations had experienced. For the first time, the Council had to consider the possibility that their warning might not produce obedience. On the streets, life continued in its strange mix of normal and extraordinary. Families cooked meals while discussing strategies. Children completed homework while imagining alien faces and spaceships. News channels broadcast live footage of the fleet, and social media exploded with theories, predictions, and analysis. Humanity's response to the Council had become a story shared around the globe, uniting people through awareness, tension, and hope. People also began to take part in smaller ways. Volunteers contributed to technological projects, students designed simulations, and hobbyists experimented with communication devices. Even artists participated, creating works that imagined human resilience and courage. The entire planet seemed to hum with energy, each person contributing to the effort to survive, to resist, and to assert humanity's place in the galaxy. As preparations continued, leaders faced a critical decision. They could remain defensive, waiting for the Council to strike, or they could take bold action to show strength. After intense debate, the choice was made. Humanity would not merely defend itself. It would assert its presence. Plans were drafted to showcase technological capabilities, strategic thinking, and the creativity that defined humans. The message to the galaxy would be clear. Earth was not a planet to be commanded. The first public demonstrations of humanity's readiness were broadcast globally. Satellites maneuvered in patterns that had never been attempted. Drones, satellites, and orbital defenses worked in coordination, showcasing human ingenuity. News anchors described the events with awe, and ordinary people cheered, amazed that humanity had achieved such feats. While the alien fleet remained a distant threat, humans felt a quiet pride in what they had accomplished. Scientists also revealed innovations that could surprise the Council. New propulsion systems, experimental energy shields, and autonomous defense drones were tested successfully. Even small victories lifted morale. Humans realized that despite the vast technological gap, their creativity, adaptability, and unity made them formidable. It was not merely strength that mattered. It was the ability to think differently, to find solutions that no one expected. Throughout this time, the global population became more aware of its place in the universe. People understood that Earth was no longer isolated. The Council had made it clear that humans were being watched, judged, and tested. Humanity had chosen defiance, and now it had to demonstrate courage, intelligence, and determination on a scale never required before. Ordinary citizens felt a part of something much larger than themselves, connected not by proximity but by shared purpose. Even cultural life reflected the new reality. Artists, musicians, and writers produced works imagining the encounter with the Council. Stories, paintings, and performances celebrated human resilience and creativity. Schools incorporated discussions about the galaxy, strategy, and survival. Humanity's collective imagination became a resource inspiring hope, innovation, and unity. The Council, in turn, seemed intrigued. Messages became less threatening and more analytical, as though observing humans was a study in progress. They commented on the creativity, adaptability, and organization displayed by Earth. While still powerful and dangerous, the Council's reactions indicated that humanity's bold choice had earned attention. Humans were no longer just a subject to be commanded. They were participants in a larger story, capable of shaping events in ways no one had anticipated. As the first week of Earth's declaration passed, the planet had changed forever. The choice to stand, to declare independence, and to prepare for conflict had united humanity in ways that fear alone could not. Nations, scientists, engineers, students, and ordinary citizens all contributed to a global effort that was unprecedented in history. The world felt both fragile and strong, aware of its vulnerability yet confident in its potential. By the end of this period, one truth was clear. Humanity had made a decision that could not be undone. Earth would not submit. The Council had been warned, and humanity was ready to defend its independence. While the outcome remained uncertain, humans had discovered a vital fact. Their strength lay not only in technology or strategy, but in unity, creativity, and courage. The alien fleet remained in orbit, silent and imposing. But the people of Earth had changed. They no longer waited passively. They observed, learned, prepared, and planned. Each day brought new discoveries, new strategies, and new ways to challenge what had once seemed impossible. Humanity was no longer a passive player in the galaxy. It had declared itself a force to be reckoned with, and in every city, village, and remote settlement, people felt the quiet certainty that the universe had noticed them, and that they were ready. For the first time, humans understood that survival depended on action, ingenuity, and courage. And as the night sky shimmered with alien ships, Earth's inhabitants looked up not with fear alone, but with determination. Humanity had chosen its path. The Council had been answered, and the galaxy would never see Earth the same way again. The tension in orbit was palpable. The alien fleet loomed above Earth like silent giants, and humans on the ground could feel the weight of every moment. There had been no attacks yet, but the presence of the Council's ships was enough to keep the planet alert. Every eye in the sky, every radar, every telescope was focused on the movements above. and every human heart carried a mix of fear and determination. Military forces around the world were on high alert. Soldiers, pilots, and engineers worked in constant shifts, preparing for scenarios that had once existed only in science fiction. Fighter crafts were stationed in orbit, ready to intercept threats. Ground defenses were reinforced, and communication networks were upgraded to ensure that no warning would be missed. Every detail mattered, because the stakes had never been higher. Humanity understood that the smallest mistake could have catastrophic consequences. But even as the planet prepared for war, humans refused to panic. Schools, offices, and cities continued to function, though under a different rhythm. Daily life had not stopped. It had transformed. Citizens shared knowledge, resources, and ideas, realizing that survival depended not only on technology, but on unity. Communities worked together to build local networks of support, ensuring that no one was left unprepared. Ordinary people became an essential part of the defense effort, contributing skills, creativity, and courage. Scientists continued to study the alien fleet. The Council's ships were massive, but patterns began to emerge. Their movements were precise, almost ritualistic, as if they were observing human behavior as much as preparing for potential combat. Analysts noted that the aliens seemed to anticipate human responses, but humans were not predictable. That unpredictability had become a powerful tool. Engineers tested unmanned drones, advanced shields, and energy-based communication systems, finding ways to exploit gaps and uncertainties in the fleet's behavior. The first skirmishes began quietly, far from public view. Small human crafts tested the limits of alien sensors, sending drones and unmanned ships into orbital corridors. They were not attacks, not yet. They were probes, experiments to understand the strength and weaknesses of the Council's ships. Each mission was risky, and the engineers knew that failure could be catastrophic. Yet with every attempt, humans learned more. They adapted, improved, and grew more confident in their capabilities. Meanwhile, ordinary people experienced the impact of these events in personal ways. Families huddled together to watch news broadcasts, children asked questions about what might happen next, and adults struggled to explain a situation that no human had ever faced. Conversations filled streets, markets, and workplaces as people shared fears, theories, and hopes. Humanity had entered a new era, one in which every individual felt a connection to events unfolding in space. The Council sent messages, but they were different now. Instead of direct commands, the transmissions were analytical, observing humanity's actions and reactions. They noted the creativity and resilience of humans, as well as the rapid coordination of the planet's defense networks. The aliens had underestimated humanity's ability to organize, to learn, and to act collectively under pressure. That realization began to shift the dynamic. Earth was no longer a passive planet. It had become a player, and one capable of surprising its observers. As the skirmishes continued, human pilots and engineers discovered something remarkable. The Council's ships, while advanced, were not invincible. Every maneuver revealed patterns, and every probe exposed small gaps. Engineers designed new strategies using agility, speed, and unconventional thinking to exploit those weaknesses. What humans lacked in raw power, they made up for in adaptability, and in those moments confidence began to grow. Not arrogance, but a quiet certainty that humans could survive, and perhaps even prevail. Across the globe, the psychological impact was profound. People began to believe in their own power, even against a civilization that dwarfed them in technology. That belief was essential, because fear alone could have paralyzed action. Now hope and determination guided choices, from military operations to everyday decisions. Communities prepared emergency plans, schools conducted drills, and engineers continued to innovate. The entire planet was united in purpose, a collective determination that no one could ignore. In secret operations, scientists experimented with advanced defense systems. Energy shields were tested against simulated attacks. Drones were sent into orbital corridors to measure energy outputs. Communication systems were designed to send false signals or confuse the fleet's sensors. Each test carried risk, but every success built confidence. Humans had discovered that intelligence, creativity, and adaptability could match, in surprising ways, the raw power of the alien fleet. The first real confrontations were small, but intense. Drones and unmanned ships collided with alien sensors, testing reactions. Humans observed every response, learning, adapting, and planning the next move. These encounters were not destructive in the way most imagined. No cities were destroyed, no weapons fired at full strength. Instead, they were strategic, controlled engagements designed to show capability and measure enemy responses. Humanity had discovered a principle that had long guided survival on Earth. Knowledge gained through careful experimentation was often more powerful than brute force. Public morale was a complex mixture of fear, excitement, and pride. While many worried about what could happen next, millions also cheered the ingenuity of humanity's defenses. News channels broadcast live feeds of testing drones, satellite maneuvers, and simulated strikes. Ordinary people felt a sense of participation in history. They were part of a planet-wide effort, and every small victory, every successful test was celebrated as proof that humans were not powerless. The Council seemed increasingly attentive. Their transmissions grew more analytical, commenting indirectly on humanity's strategies and adaptability. While still dangerous, the aliens were now studying Earth with a level of respect rarely afforded to young civilizations. They noted how quickly humans learned from mistakes, how they adapted to new information, and how they coordinated globally without centralized control. Humanity was no longer just a planet to monitor. They were a force to understand, a species capable of unpredictable and effective action. Ordinary life continued alongside preparations. Schools, workplaces, and communities adapted to the new reality. Children learned about space, strategy, and problem-solving. Adults trained, shared knowledge, and innovated. Even hobbies contributed. Model engineers, software developers, and amateur scientists tested ideas that sometimes became part of larger defense strategies. Humanity's creativity became a weapon, a way to respond to the unimaginable presence above. As the weeks passed, humanity's first skirmishes taught valuable lessons. Engineers refined drones and satellites. Pilots perfected orbital maneuvers, and communication networks became more resilient. Every attempt revealed new insights about the Council's capabilities, strengths, and limitations. Humans began to understand a simple but powerful truth. Raw power alone was not enough. Strategy, adaptability, intelligence, and collaboration could allow a smaller force to survive against a far stronger opponent. Across the globe, ordinary citizens noticed the changes in themselves and their communities. People worked together in unprecedented ways. Volunteers joined local defense efforts, educators organized awareness campaigns, and families discussed survival strategies. Fear remained, but it was balanced by hope and determination. Humanity had discovered a new identity, a species capable of facing overwhelming odds, learning, adapting, and thriving despite uncertainty. The alien fleet remained a constant presence, but humans were no longer passive observers. Every day brought new experiments, new strategies, and new demonstrations of capability. Drones, satellites, and orbital maneuvers became part of a larger plan to show intelligence, adaptability, and resilience. Even small successes were celebrated globally, reinforcing confidence and unity. As the first month of preparation and skirmishes ended, the world realized something remarkable. Humanity was no longer simply a planet under observation. They had become a participant in a galactic equation, a force capable of surprising even the most powerful civilizations. While danger remained, hope, courage, and intelligence had become humanity's most powerful weapons. The Council watched carefully. The alien ships moved in patterns that suggested analysis, observation, and consideration. While still imposing and dangerous, the aliens were beginning to understand that humanity was not easily intimidated. The young species had chosen to stand, to observe, and to learn. They had taken the first steps toward proving that survival and independence could exist even in the presence of overwhelming power. And so, life on Earth continued in a strange balance of ordinary and extraordinary. Citizens prepared, trained, studied, and innovated. Engineers and scientists tested, measured, and calculated. Pilots and military personnel rehearsed every scenario, and families adapted to a world under the constant gaze of an alien presence. Humanity had discovered that courage, unity, and intelligence were as essential as any weapon. Above, the alien fleet remained, silent, massive, and ever-present. Below, humanity had changed. Fear had not disappeared, but it had been tempered by preparation, understanding, and determination. The Humanity's first responses to the alien presence had not gone unnoticed. News traveled quickly across the galaxy, carried by signals and reports intercepted from distant civilizations. Some watched with curiosity, others with fear, and a few with quiet admiration. The Council had expected obedience, but Earth had chosen defiance. That choice sent shockwaves through systems that had long believed in the authority of the Council. Suddenly, humans were no longer a distant, inconsequential species. They were a topic of discussion, analysis, and even debate. In cities and towns around the world, people felt the weight of this new reality. The alien ship still hovered above, massive and silent, yet humanity had grown bolder. Scientists, engineers, and pilots continued their work, improving drones, testing defenses, and running simulations. Every successful test, every calculated maneuver, was broadcast globally, reminding citizens that survival required intelligence, preparation, and courage. People began to understand that they were not just witnesses. They were participants in an unprecedented moment in history. Governments, once hesitant and divided, had begun coordinating in ways that had never happened before. Nations shared technology, satellites, and defense strategies. Military leaders consulted engineers and scientists across borders, combining knowledge to create a planetary defense network. Even countries that had been rivals for centuries found themselves working toward a common goal. The enemy was above, in orbit, and every human life mattered. Fear had forced unity, and unity had strengthened humanity more than any weapon ever could. Reports from distant civilizations reached Earth through intercepted signals. Some of these civilizations had once served under the Council, offering tribute or compliance. Others had quietly observed from afar, fearful of making contact. When news of Earth's defiance spread, reactions varied. Some species were horrified, believing that challenging the Council was suicidal. Others were impressed, noting humanity's courage, ingenuity, and willingness to act despite uncertainty. Humans had, without intending to, become a symbol, a representation of defiance and survival in the galaxy. Back on Earth, ordinary people responded in ways both practical and emotional. Children asked questions about what it meant to be noticed in the galaxy. Parents shared stories not of fear, but of human resilience and ingenuity. Streets, markets, and workplaces buzzed with conversation about strategies, preparations, and hope. Even hobbies became part of the effort. Amateur engineers built model drones, software developers simulated defenses, and artists imagined ways humans could survive the overwhelming presence above. Humanity's spirit had become a living, breathing force, shared across every city, town, and village. The Council, meanwhile, observed carefully. Their ships moved in precise patterns, analyzing the planet's responses. Every demonstration of human capability, every tactical maneuver, and every adaptation was noted. The aliens had underestimated the unpredictability of humans. While they were powerful and technologically advanced, humans possessed creativity and flexibility. They could think outside patterns, improvise, and adapt in ways the Council had not anticipated. That unpredictability made Earth dangerous in a way that no weapon alone could measure. Small skirmishes continued. Humans sent drones and unmanned ships into orbital corridors, not to attack but to test reactions and measure responses. Each mission carried risk, but every mission brought knowledge. Engineers used data to improve defenses. Pilots adjusted strategies, and scientists refined communication systems. Humanity was learning quickly, turning fear into action and uncertainty into strength. As these skirmishes unfolded, global morale grew. Citizens celebrated every small victory. Even minor successes, like evading alien sensors or completing complex simulations, were broadcast widely. Humanity had discovered a truth that had guided survival for centuries. Knowledge and preparation often mattered more than raw power. People began to feel that despite the vast technological gap, Earth had a chance. They had ingenuity, adaptability, and unity, qualities that no alien fleet could fully predict or control. Beyond Earth, the galaxy began to shift. Other civilizations that had long served the Council quietly reconsidered their positions. Some wondered whether compliance was truly the safest path, while others feared that the Council's authority could be challenged if humanity survived. Traders, diplomats, and scholars began discussing Earth openly. Humanity's defiance had created uncertainty, and uncertainty in the galaxy was dangerous. The ripple effect of one planet's courage was spreading faster than anyone had imagined. On Earth, scientists worked tirelessly to improve defenses. They developed new energy shields, tested autonomous drones, and refined satellite networks. Pilots trained in orbital combat, learning to maneuver with precision and speed. Engineers experimented with ways to disrupt the Council's sensors, to create confusion and delay. Every day brought new discoveries, and every discovery strengthened confidence. Humanity realized that its most powerful weapons were not just machines, they were creativity, intelligence, and the ability to adapt. People also began preparing psychologically. Families practiced emergency routines. Communities discussed resource management, communication plans, and survival strategies. Schools introduced lessons about strategy, problem-solving, and innovation. The planet was not just physically preparing for confrontation, it was mentally readying itself. Citizens understood that fear was natural, but courage, preparation, and knowledge would be the deciding factors. Meanwhile, the alien fleet adjusted its behavior. While still imposing and precise, the ships began testing humans more subtly. Sensors were deployed in new ways. Patterns of observation shifted. The Council seemed curious, almost studying Earth as a young, unpredictable civilization. Every maneuver, every decision, every adaptation on Earth was being watched and analyzed. Humanity had become an experiment, and an experiment that was proving more resilient than the Council expected. As skirmishes continued, global leaders realized that the stakes were higher than ever. A direct confrontation with the Council could destroy the planet. But inaction could also mean submission, loss of independence, and surrender of human identity. Every strategy was weighed carefully, balancing risk and reward. Humanity understood that it had to demonstrate strength without inviting destruction, intelligence without provoking unnecessary aggression. It was a delicate balance, but one that human creativity seemed capable of managing. Across the world, people felt the excitement and tension of history unfolding. Streets were quieter at night, as citizens paused to watch the sky. Conversations revolved around strategy, innovation, and hope. Even ordinary activities like cooking or commuting carried an undercurrent of anticipation. Humanity was alive in a way that no one had experienced before. The planet itself seemed to pulse with collective effort, preparation, and courage. Reports from the galaxy continued to arrive, though fragmented and indirect. Some civilizations secretly cheered humanity's defiance. Others warned of the Council's power. The news reached Earth in pieces, but it had an effect. Humans realized that their actions had consequences far beyond their own planet. Defiance was risky, but it had also inspired curiosity, admiration, and support. Humanity's courage had begun to reshape perceptions across the stars. As weeks passed, humans became bolder in their strategies. Simulations turned into coordinated tests of capability. Satellites moved in intricate patterns. Drones tested the limits of alien detection systems, and communication networks became increasingly sophisticated. Engineers refined energy shields to protect critical installations. Scientists developed methods to predict alien responses, to anticipate movements, and to adapt in real time. Every action reinforced one simple truth: preparation, intelligence, and courage were humanity's greatest assets. The Council's reactions were careful, measured, and analytical. The aliens seemed to acknowledge the ingenuity and resilience of humans. Their movements became less about intimidation and more about observation. Humans had shown that they could survive, adapt, and even challenge assumptions. For the first time, the Council faced uncertainty, and uncertainty in the galaxy was dangerous. On Earth, ordinary people continued to support the effort in small but important ways. Volunteers helped with logistics, students participated in simulations, and communities shared resources. Every individual contribution mattered. Humanity had discovered a new identity, one where survival was not just the responsibility of leaders or scientists, but of every person. Unity, creativity, and courage had become weapons as powerful as any machine or satellite. As the first month of active preparation and skirmishes drew to a close, humanity understood something remarkable. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and overwhelming odds, yet had not faltered. They had learned, adapted, and grown stronger. The Council's presence, once a symbol of intimidation, had become a challenge to overcome. Humans had discovered that courage, intelligence, and unity could rival even the most powerful alien forces. The galaxy had noticed. The ripple effects were becoming visible. Other civilizations quietly observed, some reconsidering their loyalty to the Council, others fascinated by humanity's unpredictability. Earth had become a symbol of defiance and resilience, a young planet asserting its place in a universe. The world waited. After weeks of preparation, skirmishes, and careful observation, humanity faced a moment unlike any in its history. The alien fleet in orbit was massive, their ships glinting in the sunlight like metal mountains suspended in space. They had observed, analyzed, and tested, and now, it seemed, the Council was ready to respond. Every person on Earth felt the tension. No one knew what would happen next, and that uncertainty was both terrifying and exhilarating. Yet humanity had changed. The fear that had first gripped the planet was now balanced by a quiet determination. Scientists, engineers, and pilots had proven that human ingenuity could challenge even overwhelming power. Citizens around the world had contributed in small ways that mattered. Communities were prepared. Families had plans. Children had learned that courage was as important as knowledge. And leaders understood that every decision, every move, could shape the survival of the species. The first official message from the Council arrived. It was not threatening this time, but measured, almost formal. The aliens acknowledged Earth's defiance and detailed the consequences that could follow. They spoke of power that humans could barely comprehend, of fleets that could strike anywhere on the planet in moments, of technologies that could dismantle cities without warning. The message was clear. The Council was not bluffing. Governments held emergency meetings. Military leaders consulted with engineers. Scientists analyzed every possible outcome. Citizens waited, watching, listening, and preparing for a confrontation that could redefine humanity's future. There was no panic, only focus. Humanity had learned that fear alone could destroy morale. Preparation, intelligence, and unity were the tools that would determine survival. While the world held its collective breath, the first visible move came not from the Council, but from humans. Drones, satellites, and unmanned crafts moved in precise patterns around the planet, a demonstration of capability rather than aggression. Every maneuver was calculated to show intelligence, adaptability, and unity. It was a statement to the galaxy. Humanity was not defenseless. The Council watched, silently noting the precision and creativity of human action. Ordinary citizens participated in subtle but meaningful ways. Communities monitored local skies, shared information, and maintained communication networks. Schools discussed strategy and problem-solving. Artists, engineers, and students contributed ideas, simulations, and innovations. Humanity's collective spirit had become a weapon of its own. Courage, creativity, and determination now held as much weight as weapons or shields. As the first direct tests began, humans realized the importance of timing, coordination, and strategy. Small unmanned ships moved toward the alien fleet, not to attack but to observe, gather data, and test defenses. Each mission was calculated, every risk measured. Engineers adapted quickly, refining drones and satellites based on observed responses. Pilots practiced maneuvers, learning how to anticipate alien patterns and react with speed and creativity. Humanity was no longer merely reacting. They were leading, shaping events in ways the Council had not expected. The Council, for its part, was cautious. Their ships moved in formations that were both intimidating and analytical. Every action suggested calculation, observation, and strategy. They recognized that humans were unpredictable, clever, and adaptable. That unpredictability had made Earth more dangerous than any weapon alone could. The Council's attention was focused on understanding, anticipating, and preparing for humans who refused to be subdued. Across the globe, people watched the sky and listened to news broadcasts. Some whispered prayers, others held their children close. Fear remained, but it had transformed into determination. Humanity had faced uncertainty, adapted, and learned. Now everyone understood that survival depended on courage, creativity, and unity. Ordinary citizens felt part of something larger than themselves, a story of defiance, resilience, and hope that spanned the planet. The first small confrontations occurred quietly in orbit. Human drones entered the paths of alien sensors, testing reactions. Some were successful, evading detection and gathering data. Others were detected, but even failures became lessons. Engineers analyzed every signal, every energy pulse, and adjusted strategies. Humans learned quickly. They adapted. They improved. And the Council observed, noting the unprecedented speed of learning and the creativity displayed by a species it had underestimated. Humanity's global preparation continued. Satellites moved in intricate patterns to create networks of defense. Pilots practiced orbital maneuvers with precision and speed. Engineers developed energy shields, communication networks, and autonomous drones capable of acting without immediate human input. Every effort, every innovation added to humanity's resilience. Citizens felt pride in knowing that every person, from a scientist in a lab to a farmer monitoring the sky, was contributing to survival. As days passed, the Council sent more messages. They were analytical, less threatening, more observing. The aliens seemed curious, almost as if studying humans as an unpredictable experiment. Every maneuver, every adaptation, every strategic decision by humanity was noted. The Council began to recognize that Earth was not merely a passive planet. It was a species capable of resilience, creativity, and ingenuity. For the first time, uncertainty had entered the calculations of the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. Small victories boosted morale. Unmanned drones completed missions undetected. Satellites gathered critical data. Engineers developed new systems that could respond to attacks in real time. Each success, though minor, had a profound psychological effect. Humanity realized that raw power alone was not the key to survival. Intelligence, adaptability, and courage could match and even challenge a force that seemed unbeatable. In homes, communities, and schools, people felt the impact. Children learned about problem-solving, creativity, and courage. Families shared strategies and monitored developments. Conversations in streets, markets, and workplaces reflected excitement, tension, and hope. Humanity had discovered a new identity, a species capable of facing overwhelming odds and thriving, not just surviving. The alien fleet, still massive and imposing, seemed to respond. Ships adjusted formations, deployed sensors in new patterns, and tested human defenses. But the Council's attention was not just on offense, they were learning. Humanity's unpredictability and creativity forced them to observe carefully, adapt their strategies, and consider possibilities they had not expected. Earth had become more than a planet to control. It was now a force to study, a species to understand. The first major confrontation came subtly. Human drones entered orbital corridors designed to test alien energy outputs. Satellites sent signals that disrupted some sensors. Pilots maneuvered crafts in ways that created new data about enemy behavior. No weapons were fired at full strength, but every action demonstrated capability, adaptability, and resilience. Humans were sending a clear message. They could survive, adapt, and learn faster than the Council had anticipated. The impact of these actions was felt across the galaxy. Signals reached other civilizations, showing that humans were not a species to underestimate. Some admired the courage and ingenuity. Others worried about the consequences of Earth's defiance. The ripple effect of one planet's actions had begun to change perceptions, not just within the Council, but across star systems far beyond Earth. On the ground, people celebrated every small victory. The realization that intelligence, creativity, and unity could challenge a seemingly unbeatable force inspired pride and hope. Communities worked together more closely. Engineers, scientists, and pilots continued to innovate. Citizens contributed ideas, monitored skies, and maintained preparedness. Humanity's survival depended on every individual, and everyone understood that their contribution mattered. The Council, while still powerful, had changed its approach. Their messages were no longer only warnings, they were inquiries, observations, and calculations. The aliens began to recognize that humans could not be controlled through fear alone. Earth had demonstrated resilience, ingenuity, and courage. For the first time, the Council faced uncertainty in their assessment of a young species. As the final days of preparation continued, humanity realized something profound. Survival was not just about defense. It was about identity, courage, and the determination to exist on their own terms. Every test, every maneuver, every innovation was a declaration that humans would not bow easily. The galaxy had issued a warning, but Earth had responded with creativity, intelligence, and determination. The alien fleet remained, vast and imposing, but humanity had changed. Citizens, scientists, engineers, and leaders had proven that fear could be transformed into action, that intelligence could challenge raw power, and that courage could unite an entire species. The story of Earth's defiance had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and ingenuity, a story that would echo far beyond the planet itself. And so, as humans watched the alien ships glinting in the sky, they understood that the future was uncertain. Conflict could come, but humanity was no longer passive. The planet had prepared, adapted, and learned. Intelligence, creativity, courage, and unity had become the greatest weapons a species could wield. Earth had faced the galaxy and declared its place, not as a subject, not as a pawn, but as a resilient, resourceful, and